Well, welcome back to the big board. Here we go. Let's get this out of the way. Have a look at YAAH magazine, which was just sent to me. Thank you, Mark Walker from YAAH Publishing, or Flying Pig Games, or Tiny Battles Publishing. Mark's got a couple of endeavors going on. This is issue number 12. And Mark was very excited about this issue because he thinks it's one of the best ones. And let's have a look and see if it is. I've read many of the initial editions that came out of the issues of the magazine, and I've enjoyed most of them very much. It's, to me, this is the American version of Battles magazine. It's relatively thoughtful articles across a broad spectrum of topics. It doesn't necessarily have the discrete and well-defined sections that the Battles magazine does, but it sure does have some good articles and some interesting coverage on a pretty wide variety of topics. So, editor talks about zones of control. There's some advertorial content in here as well. But the writers who happen to be game designers who happen to be making games for the magazine, or not for the magazine, but for Tiny Battles or for Flying Pig. Obviously, you have an opportunity here to have a stage and have a voice, so that's nice. You get to read a little bit about what's going on behind the scenes with design. And there's obviously a game in it as well. We'll have a look at MacArthur's defeat in a minute. We'll look at everything on that in a second. This is my second go at doing this video. I guess I forgot to press record, or I deleted it or something, but I had a awesome video that went, because I just read all the articles. They were all fresh in my mind. And now it's a week later, and here we are. So I've got to get this done before I head off on vacation. Armageddon War is a game that I own, and I pulled it out and had a look at it and started setting it up, and there was a couple of little errors in the scenario setup, and I spat the dummy, got the knickers in a twist, and didn't set it up, didn't play it. And now that I've read this article by Greg Porter, the designer, I think I'm probably need to get over myself and get it set up and play, because it looks like it's going to be a fun game. When you read this article by Greg, he started out, looking at all the YouTube, what are those little cameras called? The cameras they put on the helmets and stuff like that. The helmet cam footage of all these ISIS fighters and GIs and all the rest of it, and was looking at how modern combat really kind of comes out, and a lot of it is really bad. Some of it's pretty awesome, right? But it's also crazy. Some of the footage from Syria, if you've watched any of it, it's off the chain. But anyway, he writes an article about how he thought combat should work in this sort of post-apocalyptic setting, and the different bits and pieces that go into the game design and combat. The dice mechanic, which for me is pretty interesting. I like the way the dice work in this game. As I said, I've read the rules and was ready to play. So I like the gradiated effort here with the dice and the combat values. I love the use of color with the different numerals on the counters. That just saves us having to memorize and know things. We can know that yellow means something, and white means something, and black means something. And then the behind the scenes, there's these icons that are other capabilities, right? So and some special features as well, communications and morale and control and stuff like that. So really good article there. So that's got me fired up to get that out. This game, John Burt writes a couple of articles for this magazine, this issue of this magazine. And this one, I was surprised at how interesting this looks. It feels a lot like the Storm Over series, and it probably is, as I said, it's built on a a variety or a variation on Storm over Arnhem. So it's that system. So it'll be a fun game, but it's a big game. I didn't realize just how large this game was. Looks really interesting. I just played the block game that's area impulse based called Stalingrad from Vento Nuovo. That's an excellent game as well. I'm wondering if this will get into the same class of gameplay as that. This looks a little more granular in terms of the size of the areas. The areas are much smaller, so that will be interesting to have a look at too. So another good article there in that regard. That goes on and on. Great commentary on BAOR and FRG. You know, if you're a Panzer fan or an MBT fan, you have to get these two modules just for the maps. And this is basically what the article says as well by Norm Lundy. You know, you've got an airfield for crying out loud, right? There's a electrical power station. And then this has also got an AAR built into it as well. But the maps are awesome, despite the color scheme on the maps, that everything kind of evocative of the Eastern Front with its color scheme. Not sure why the Panzer theme was carried over, but it was. Nevertheless, you've got a large set of new maps, Leos, all sorts of challenges and all sorts of fun stuff. So good articles here on that stuff. I really enjoyed picking that up and reading it a little bit more. My favorite travel game, Table Battles. I take this pretty much with me everywhere I go now when I'm traveling. I think I've been playing one rule wrong, so as I read this, either that or Matt Foster is playing wrong. So Matt, maybe you and I should swap emails so I can work out whether it's me or you. Love this game. It's very abstract. It's very light, but it does evoke a sense of place and purpose in the game. It uses these sticks to represent strength, and as you lose units, you'll lose morale cubes. And the numbers here represent the dice you need to roll from a pool of dice to be able to place them on a counter on a card that will then allow you to conduct an attack against a unit that's within your area of influence. And that's it. It's a really straightforward game. There's reaction and action, and there are some subtleties and little onion peeling action going on once you get into it a little bit, once you've started playing a little bit more. But basically the game is pretty straightforward. I've got the original version and the Alexandrian expansion. Very good stuff. So that's a good article for folks that have never played before. And if you buy the C3I magazine, the most current edition, whatever number that is, number 32 or 33, it has the rules all on one two-sided page. I put mine in a those what do you call the plastic doohickeys that you can melt together. Anyway, one of those. So I've got the rules all permanently protected because they stay in my work bag and I travel with them. Anyway, beside the point. Right. Brad Smith, you may know that he's writing books now and doing a good job of that. They're all sort of in the modern era. Hypothetical World War III. He's also released a game called NATO Air Commander, and this game's a beatdown as a solo game. It is a hard game to play, and you have to have some serious spine. You're going to fail your morale roll on this bad boy. But he writes about his design experience and working out what it is he should have done, could do better. Did he, how to respond to criticism and all the rest of it. And all in all, I'll say this is a good game. It gives a good, once again, it's an abstract level conceptual game, but it gives you a feel for some of the decision making and some of the hard choices that were probably had to be made for the NATO Air Command. So that's kind of cool stuff, right? Great War Commander. I have not read this article yet, though I know there's been quite a bit of commentary about the lack of British in this particular release. And if you don't know Great War Commander, it's basically platoon scale combat commander with the cards and all the rest of it. But because it's World War One, you've got to have platoons of guys because they're going to die too fast. Fantastic maps and artwork. Gameplay seems to be great, but obviously the elephant in the room is there's extra modules coming, and those modules will include the British because the Americans were included as a I guess as a means to try and drive more sales, perhaps. I don't know. Nice maps. If you want to play World War One tactical at that level, God bless you. This is probably the game for you. It's got some tanks in it. Yeah, it's great. Got a lot of 1918 battles in it, according to this article. So there you go. Raiders of the Deep. Whew. Submarine games, man. Nicholas does a great job of reviewing this game. And this is a fairly sophisticated naval game. Probably, to my mind, one of the more complicated ones out there, but I don't pay a whole lot of attention to naval games. As you can see here, it does tend to get a little technical, and there's lots of note-taking and bits and pieces, but if you're into subs, you're probably into that shit. Right. I am buying this game, Rosebud Creek. John Burt wrote a great article about this. I've been following this series for quite some time and never really read enough about it to get me enthused enough to purchase a game in this sort of asymmetrical, tactical level Cowboys and Indians game that's hex and counter, right? It was probably a bit of a mouthful, but this article has convinced me that this is something that I should try out, just because I think it will be particularly interesting, and it will highlight the values and capabilities of each of the forces. So another long article with great artwork in it. Dark War. Well, so here's kind of the advertorial stuff. This is Mark's take on World War III meets fantasy stuff. And there's now an RPG out for it. I have it. Played a little bit of it. I'm not a big RPG guy, but this is a really good system if you want a good base level, throw some dice, go some one-on-one and fighting and action, or if you want to build actual more detailed characters out and create scenarios and campaigns and do it in kind of the Twilight 2000s style of theme, I guess, but without all the micromanagement, as Brad Smith writes about in this article, then this is probably the RPG for you. You can see it's pretty fundamentally basic, but there's no reason why you can't replace it with minis and get after it and have a lot of fun. There's some obviously got the artwork there, big old monster werewolf-sized dude. Sliced an arm off some guy who's got his head stuck out of an M1. And there's an article that Eddie wrote about Genesis. I have not read this yet. Really can't comment on it terribly much, so I won't, because that kind of wraps up the magazine. But it's very well laid out with the high gloss paper and full color all the way through. Very nice. And then we've got the rules for MacArthur, the battle for Luzon, to MacArthur's defeat. Right, straightforward map. Got some nice terrain, good colors on it. Using a white border font, white border for the map. Haven't seen that in a long time. Maybe it's making a comeback. I'm not sure, but there is that. It has that going for it, which is nice. So you've got what appears to be a fairly detailed game, actually, because as I skim read the rules, you are managing supply to a certain extent. You are managing the air war to a certain extent, although abstract. And then you've got the full-on set of units here that's pretty extensive. That's all battalion and regiment scale. Now, of course, it's a tiny battle scale game, right? In terms of the composition of the counters and things like that. But nice counters to look at. They are a little thin, but they look like they're all going to punch out okay. As you can see, some are already popping out here. There's a little play aid here as well for both sides to share. And the charts and tables are on the back here. Combat results and terrain effects. I haven't played it yet, can't comment, but I will be trying to get that set up first thing when I get back. And that is a brief look at YAAH issue 12. Appreciate the complimentary copy, and I will get on to MacArthur's Defeat when I get back. And I would encourage you to, have a look at some of the past issues and current issues. I think you can also download these via PDF as well, I believe. I think I'm saying that right, Mark. Sorry if you can't. So you can buy the magazine just digitally as well. But that seems to be a trend that is late to come to our marketplace. I would love to see organizations and publishers making their content and past content available online via a download and PDF at reasonable prices, so that we can all have access to it. And particularly for me as a blogger, if I want to do some coverage of this, I've got to take pictures and upload them. They take up a lot more space than if I had a PDF and I could take a screen grab and get just the little bits I need and not have to spend the time on the editing. So happy to see that evolve as the marketplace evolves. All right. YAAH Magazine, issue number 12, February 2019. Good stuff.